Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
All right, here we are, man, streaming from my car with Men Talking Mindfulness. So, hey, what's our saying? It's raw, uncut, and unapologetic.
Unapologetic.
So I don't apologize for the pink child seat in the back. Hey, because you know what? I drive a little yellow Fiat, and I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. So here we are, John McCaskill and my co-host, my brother from another mother over there in New York, Will Schneider.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Right.
I got extra volume coming in here. My bad, John. Oh, shit. I know, this is not working. All right, hold on.
All right. So turn the audio. Unapologetic, baby.
Yeah, okay. So, just to you, John, not anyone else. All right, I'm just kidding.
Wow. So anyway, yeah, here we are. So earlier this week on Monday, we had Liz Plank, the author of For the Love of Men, and last week we had an intro to that book, For the Love of Men. This week, or rather this part of this week, we regularly broadcast on Fridays. Today we're broadcasting on Thursday. I'm just going to be out of town tomorrow. So thank you for tuning in a day early. Will, thanks for flexing with me and going a day early. But what we're going to unpack today after our grounding session and after our mindful moment is we're going to unpack some of that conversation on Monday, unpack some of what we didn't get to on Monday, and then both of us, Will and myself, sat in a great webinar today, or part of a webinar. It's a 4-part series by Ed Frauenheim and Ed Anderson, authors of another book that we're Ed Adams.
I got you.
So great book that we're reading, and they will be guests on our show next month. With Reinventing Masculinity is their book, and we'll put a link to their webinar that they've got going on right now in the comments here shortly. Will, over to you, man. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, John. I was really so inspired by sitting in that that workshop, that webinar with you, and just really hearing like more of this work being said by more people, by men as well. And it was just so inspiring to listen to what they had to say. We're going to read a little bit from their book. Just some excerpts just to kind of advance the conversation that we've already started, bring some new language in as well, and new concepts around masculinity and that big trigger, toxic masculinity. I'm really excited about talking today more about. Also, I talked to one of our listeners, Lee Graham. We shared some time yesterday talking about some aspects of the show, and I'm looking forward to sharing that,
Awesome.
And I just want to give a big thanks and shout out to everybody that's been engaged with the show, sharing the show, listening, commenting on the show. It's like, and tell me how you feel in a second, John, but it's so inspiring. I feel like I have a greater sense of passion for this, a greater sense of responsibility to continue to advance this conversation and just really help men and everybody live healthier lives. So thank you all out there for giving your energy to the show, because I know it feeds myself, and I know John as well, that we just keep digging a little bit deeper.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, man. It's pretty wild, the dialogue that has been happening in the chats, both on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and then obviously having Liz on the show and the conversation that we had on Monday. But I do want to get into the other terminology that Ed used in this workshop. We'll get into that here shortly. Let's
teasing
jump
all day. We're teasing.
It's just an hour of teasing. That's all. So anyway, man, you want to lead the opening, and I'll wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to. So
Right on.
here we go. We have our, I think we've been doing this quite a bit. So create your space. All right. As long as you can hear what we're saying, and even if you're listening to this on the replay, on a podcast or something like that, and you're walking down the street, so try to like make more intentional contact with yourself in some ways. It could be finding your feet as we walk and you breathe. It could be if you're sitting, make interlace your fingers, bring your hands on your thighs. Um, maybe even turn away from your computer for a second. And just as long as you can hear, that's what matters. So ground yourself down, right, by making that contact, right, whether you're walking or sitting with hands and feet. Have a nice long spine. Let's maybe just roll through your head or give yourself some free movement that kind of opens you up a little bit more and relaxes your body, and also helps to like shift the energy into this place right now instead of like where you were, whatever phone call or something you were doing before. And then see if you can get still. It's helpful sometimes when you want to find more of your breath or just kind of make more greater contact, hand on belly, hand on chest if you like. And let's just take a few breaths here, right? So take a big, big inhale. And take a nice exhale out your mouth. A nice cooling, relaxing sigh. There we go. Take another big, giant inhale. Exhale, cooling sigh out. One more of those. Big breath in. Bigger, 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 bigger. More, more, more. Even open and lift your chest up to invite that breath in underneath your top of your chest. And exhale, let that go. Let's allow the breath to slowly flow in and out of the nose. So big breath into the nose, like we have been. Now really softly, slowly from the very beginning of the exhale, nice and easy. Let that exhale slowly release out. And I really invite you with just the exhale again, because that's going to help us relax and calm and open up our mind, our heart, to just give one, however you want to feel right now, right? Bring that quality of that feeling, right? And activate it in your exhale. So if you want to feel good, or you want to feel happy, or whatever that is right now, or relaxed, enhance the quality of the action of exhaling with how you want to feel. Let's just do a few more, and you can see, if you take a bigger inhale, you have more of that exhale to play with. And in the process, understanding how incredibly powerful and transformative your breath is. And just keep going. Bigger breath in. Exhale with that quality of how you want to feel. Two more. One more big inhale. Let go, let go. And just take last moment here. Just take an emotional inventory. How you feeling? Get that internal selfie, like John likes to say. Just take a picture, an authentic picture, not like, posing for the Instagram, thing, but just a real authentic inventory of how you're feeling. Great, great, great. And when you're ready, maybe put a little smile on your face and open your eyes, and we can come back. And wow, John, always feel better, always more grounded, and always feel more present for you in the show after doing our grounding exercise. So thank you.
No, thank you, man. Always, like you said, you feel more grounded. I feel more grounded. Hopefully, those who are tuning in,
Yeah.
hopefully they're participating and they feel more
Yeah.
grounded, or they're
Yeah.
just staring at two guys doing breathing drill on LinkedIn and laughing at us.
Right, exactly.
But hey, if we offer you guys entertainment, that's great too. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, into the kind of the mindful moment for the week. Um, a friend of mine, Teresa Larson, also that I run some workshops with. She's a former Marine over in San Diego, and she was telling me about how she's really started to make a point of staring into her children's eyes. You know, that she's got young kids like I do, a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, and I've got a 3-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. Is that right? Yeah. 3-year-old and almost 2-year-old. Uh, and this past weekend, my wife took my little girl out to Lake Tahoe and they did some skiing. And then it was just me and my little boy here in Colorado Springs. And we talking about masculinity and male bonding. You know, I think I talked a little bit about this on Monday. You know, my little boy wanted to put the dress on and run around in the dress. But I also really connected with him. Granted, this is over the same period of time or the same weekend, but I took some time with him just to be quiet. Now he's barely talking, saying a few words here and there, but I took some time just to be quiet with him and really look him in the eyes, and just the amount of emotion and intelligence that you can see in just a almost 2-year-old. Their eyes was incredible, and I think just in those few moments that we did that, we bonded at you know, in a way that we haven't before. And I think that I had to bring that up because it ties directly into our conversation about masculinity and what masculinity is, defining masculinity, defining what it's not, defining what toxic masculinity is and what that's not, and everything there. So I thought that was a mindful moment that I should bring up for the show.
Yeah, way to
What
go,
was yours,
John.
man?
It's yeah, and the children at that such a young age are incredibly so vulnerable, so open. So I can only
Yeah.
imagine, like, and just so available to those feelings, and just to have his own father, who, you know, I mean, you're like, you're his, like, you know, his God, a God in some way in his life, you know, just to be able to like take his own father in, like, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's
John.
pretty cool, man. It's really cool. So
I really appreciate hearing that. My mindfulness moment this week is like I kind of come back to forgiveness again. You know, for myself. Like I don't know what it is, John. Like I'm you know, I'm working hard. You know, things are really great, but you know, I'm not necessarily doing all like the physical things I want. Like I'm not. I started running this year. I'm not running. You know, I'm not working out like I like to. You know, I do all these like high intensity interval trainings in my studio here in New York. And I haven't been doing, you know, the training that I wanted. And then, you know, I think the mindfulness is, or the kind of the switch over and the forgiveness part is just, you know, really letting myself know, like, I'm doing the best I can with the time I have. And, you know, and also we're kind of, you know, maybe as an excuse in some ways, we're kind of in this hibernating phase right now. And it's okay if I'm not super hyper active and like, you know, I mean, I still feel great, but but I'm also being aware of, you know, beating myself up in those moments and trying to change that script, because if I'm beating myself up in the morning, like I'm going to be carrying that beat self up, you know, kind of attitude most of the day. So that's like, so just being okay with what I'm doing right now with the time I have. And
I think
it's nice.
so many people need to really start to practice that. We talk about compassion a lot on this show. We've also talked a lot about self-compassion and how important that is. And I know Ed and Ed talked about that this morning as well. And during this pandemic, during the winter months as well, you know, there are so many reasons we can give ourselves to, one, feel sorry for ourselves, but also reasons that are legit. There are legitimate reasons for why you may not want to get to the gym, or why even getting to the gym may not be a good idea. Maybe you need some rest. So giving yourself that compassion. but at the same time, give yourself compassion, but don't give yourself an easy out, right? So there's that balance, and I think that's exactly that yin and yang, and finding that line, but appreciating both sides of that line too. So good on you for that, man.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. We have so much to talk about, John. Like, should we introduce some of the content of
let's
Ed books, or we want to go? We're also, so just so everyone knows what lay of the land today, our listeners out there. We're gonna we kind of mined a bunch of the comments that are gonna help forward the show from last last time with Liz. We're gonna try to get through some of those. Also, some of the questions that John had for Liz that we didn't get to, maybe we can talk about. But that's just kind of lay of the land. So where should we start, John?
I think so that we get people off the defensive, because I think that term toxic masculinity that came up several times, and even Liz said that she was trying to find a way to write the book without the term toxic masculinity in it because of how volatile it could be.
Right.
Let's use a different term, and it was a term that Ed used this morning that I really love, and you've got it right there in your book that we could find, and that's the confined masculinity.
Right.
Let's talk about that, and then we can get into some of the comments from the show on Monday, and then some of the things that we may not have talked to Liz about that we had written down that we never got around to. So start there.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna start with actually a part in their preface, and then I'm gonna go into the definition of their confined masculinity. And I want to read this part of the book where they talk about imagination. Because I think that it's, well, I'm just going to read it and then I'll talk about it for a second. Okay. So finally, a word about imagination. And this is in Reinventing Masculinity from Ed Adams and Ed Fronheim. Here they go. Quote, finally, a word about imagination. If we couldn't imagine flying in the air like a migrating bird, manned flight would not be possible. All the engineering trials and errors and hours of focused work built the first plane. But that was possible first and foremost because it existed in imagination. This book provides practical information for breaking free from an obsolete way of being a man, and for moving to healthier, powerful, and expansive masculinity. But the book will be most effective when you engage your imagination, where you consider how masculinity can be reinvented in your personal life, in your place of work, and your community, and in our world. Thank you for imagining along with us. Boom.
Nice.
That's
end
great.
The show right there, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm done. Okay, I drop the mic. All right, we're out. And I think it's like, and we'll talk about confined masculinity in a second, but I words are really powerful, like really, really powerful. And when we go, I think, so far into the power of those words that it takes us away from the other possibilities of other words and the imagination that is also inherent within those words. Then it just becomes, almost like a war of words in some ways. And because also these words are so powerful, we begin, especially the word toxic, we like hang ourselves emotionally on those words, instead of like staying open, staying receptive, staying compassionate, and living in imagination for redefining something else that's possible. Anything? Should we go to confined?
Let's. Well, I'll tell you what. Before we actually move to a new term, you and I discussed a phone call that you had this week with one of our listeners, Lee Graham, and you got into exactly what is toxic,
right?
What's not. I'd love. Let's go through that and then go through the next word. Or
that's
term.
Great. Oh, way to take charge, John. I love it.
I'm the director, man.
Yeah, I know. You're the commander. So I had a great conversation, and I asked if I could mention his name on the air. Lee Graham, who, he was very active in our comment section with Liz and basically throughout every episode we've done. He's in Texas. I'm in New York. I don't know why I said Texas when I'm not really like that, but I'm from New York. We talked yesterday morning for almost over an hour, actually. And first off, Lee's just a gentleman, father of 5, great man. Like, he can, I just felt when I was talking to Lee, that he's coming from that heart space. You know what I mean? He's coming from the heart space, which like we bonded right instantly around that place. And he goes, Will, what I really struggle with about that concept of like toxic masculinity, right? And which means like, we kind of broke down the semantic toxic masculinity and like, and like how they immediately we assume that men are toxic or all men are toxic or the conversation go that way. And then we just started to kind of hash out this whole idea of toxic and toxicity. And what we kind of ground it down into, it's like, it's not that men are toxic. It's the values of what we'll talk about, confined masculinity, right? Which we'll talk about it, that creates toxicity, not only to the man himself, right? But also to other people around him. We'll define those values when we talk about confined masculinity. But I really enjoyed that conversation with Lee, and really being able to understand it's like, not like men are not inherently bad, and toxic masculinity is an extremely triggering term in a lot of ways, and I think it should be, because it's also, I like it too because it's a wake-up call. It's like, because like, look how many people stopped and thought about this and started commenting on it. And that's what we're trying to do here, John, is to really provoke and incite, right, a good, honest, compassionate conversation about how we can be better men in the world. In order to become better men, we have to know where we are, right? And then we bridge the gap to where we want to be. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's not masculinity in and of itself that's toxic. There's aspects of it that are. And I think one of the main aspects that we hit on last week is just being inauthentic, and not allowing people to be their authentic selves. So one, not allowing yourself to be your authentic self, and then 2, suppressing other people's from being their authentic selves. So like, hey, you know what? If my little boy wants to wear a dress, hey, whatever, let him run around in that. I'm not going to suppress that. Right. And then
also letting other men come in. It's like, yo, why you letting your son wear a dress?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what's up with that? Like, I put my masculine voice on.
I dare a man to come into my house and tell me how to raise my son. They're going to see some toxic masculinity. I'm kidding.
Looks right back.
No, but yeah. So the other side of things is as men with other men, like, hey, if a man tears up, or if a man starts showing any type of emotion, people are like, hey man, suck it up. Stop being a girl. Stop being a woman. Stop being a lady. And it's like, really? That's toxic. That is toxic masculinity, is suppressing somebody else from expressing who they are or suppressing their emotions. And that suppression ties directly into the confined masculinity word that Ed and Ed use. And I'd love you to read that definition.
All right, here we go. Handy. All right, enough teasing. All right, really? All right, so here we go. This is again from Reinventing Masculinity, which we're going to share, on our website and everything like that. So I'm really excited. These guys are coming in March 5th. March 5th, we're going to have these 2 guys on. So confined masculinity focuses on a man's separateness more than his sense of belonging. For example, many confined men believe they should keep emotions to themselves, be self-sufficient, show no vulnerability. Confined masculinity also has a fundamental fearful outlook, a mindset of scarcity, and ever-present danger. Wow, that one hit me when I read that. Confined masculinity effectively puts men in a defensive crouch, ready to snarl at perceived threats, predisposed to lash out, and stuck with a distorted view of their surroundings. Wow. That's pretty intense. Should I read it one more time?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, one more time.
Like I think even some of the comments that I'm reading just right now, you know, we have, and you know, I'm not going to get combative on this, but you know, I think the definition that you read there may help some people to understand what it is we're talking about. We're not talking about emasculating all men. We're not talking about it turning all men into feminine versions of themselves. What we're talking about is taking some of the chains off and allowing ourselves to be who we truly are. And I think that's going to get into the next definition. The next definition is the liberation, right? Which
I haven't got to that part of the book yet,
no,
John.
It's fine. It's fine. So
but I'm going to read it again, right? And I just again, you know, coming back to imagination, right? So just be open, right? And also, what they're defining here is the toxic part of what Liz's book was about, the toxic masculinity. These toxic values, right, are in this definition. And yeah, okay, I'm gonna read. Okay, here we go. Going back. Okay, confined masculinity focuses on a man's separateness more than on his sense of belonging. For example, many confined men believe they should keep emotions to themselves, be self-sufficient, and show no vulnerability. Confined masculinity also has a fundamentally fearful outlook, a mindset of scarcity, and an ever-present danger. Whew. Confined masculinity effectively puts men in a defensive crouch, ready to snarl at perceived threats, predisposed to lash out, and stuck with a distorted view of their surroundings.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah. That's eye-opening, and I'm glad you read it twice, because there's even things that I heard the second time because I haven't started the book.
It's loaded. You know, it's loaded.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I think that's a more palatable term. Yeah. So reinventing masculinity by Ed and Ed, and especially when you define it, you see what's wrong with it, right? You see that, you know, as a leader. Let's say you're a leader of an organization, a leader of a family, a leader of a group of friends, whatever. Mm-hmm. As a leader, you can't have that view that you're separate from. You know, we need that view that we're together, and we need a view where we are not on the defensive all the time, ready to snarl in that crouching position, where we can accept people when they come to us with different ideas or different views, so we're not instantly on the attack. And I think that's where the toxic side of that confined masculinity actually comes into play again. So yeah, I love it, man. And for anyone who's curious about Ed and Ed, we've got them coming on next month, reinventing masculinity, but they've also got a workshop right now. I think they just did the second of 4 webinars. And there's a link in the comments if you're interested in joining their webinar on how to be a happier and healthier man, and still display masculinity without being toxic and without being confined. So check that link out if you're interested. So, all right, now all the teasers.
Well,
we're half hour into the show.
Say one thing, John. It's like that. Just think of that word. I like the word confined. Like confined means limited. You know, I'm stuck in a box, right? I only have, you know, a certain way of doing things, or a certain way of feeling, a certain way of, you know, relating to myself and other people, you know, and that's like, I mean, I don't want to be limited. You know what I mean? I don't want to be toxic either, right? But this confined, it's like, I don't want to be limited. It's like, what is, you know, that brilliance that I have? And I think that's what life is so much about. It's like going in and mining more of that brilliance. What can I do? What am I capable of? And it's not just always coming from that place. When I say that, I'm feeling, it's just achieving and success. It's like, how can I be more involved in my relationships? How can I be, you know, a better man to other men? How can I be a better man to boys? How can I be a better man in every single aspect of my life? Right. Yeah. And that's going to take work, you know, especially if we've geared up with, you know, the toxic or confined masculinity, you know, protocol for most of our life.
Right. So, yeah. You know what really really jumped out at me was um, one of the ads, I forget which one it was talking about a retired military officer who had always, been a leader, right, in the military, and then he considered himself a leader in his family, and that's great. You can be a leader in your family, and I think that honestly, in my family, that role moves between myself and my wife periodically, and sometimes it's me, sometimes it's her, sometimes I need to lean on her, sometimes she needs to lean on me. But this guy, he had always, when he was having a conversation with his wife, would have the conversation with her from behind his desk, as though he were the boss and she was an employee. And I think a lot of men have those relationships, not just with their wives or significant others, but they have those relationships with everyone.
Right.
They have I'm a boss and you're an employee, perception, and that can kill relationships or prevent relationships from flourishing into something much more than just a transactional relationship. I think that's what they refer to it as, something like that. And that's really powerful. That actually, I don't know if we're ever going to get to the comments from Monday's show, but it brings me to one of the things that we were going to ask on Monday's show that we never did to one another.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Say it again. I read a comment, John. My apologies.
No, you're good. So it was, I was still planning on asking the question. It brings me to one of the questions that we had to ask on Monday that we never got around to, that we were going to ask to one another. And the question is, would you feel comfortable with any of the men in your world, in your life, sharing the same things that you would with your female friends, with your close females? And I will tell you, excluding my wife, because obviously my wife is my best friend, so I'm going to share a lot with her. But
she's a woman too,
She is a woman, but she is a woman too. But I want to take her out of the equation so it doesn't skew the answer. Right. I am going to share a lot more right now openly with a female friend than I will with most male friends. But I think I'm changing that because of how being vulnerable with male friends can actually further those bonds, strengthen those bonds, and show strength. And that exactly, the ripple effect goes off. So I want to throw that over to you, man. How would you feel like sharing something that you are maybe vulnerable, just showing vulnerability, period? How would you feel?
No, thank you, John. And I, I'm lucky, and I think I worked in these relationships too. Like I have, I have one of my brothers, like share anything with him, everything. Like, he's my brother, and he's my best friend, and I'm able to open and talk to him. And actually, I'm lucky, John. Like I've been in New York a long time. It's rather progressive society in a lot of ways, and which is, I think, a gift. As you really want to develop, anything you want to do in your life. But I have probably a couple friends I could actually share deep things with. Nice. If like heard of a relation, I'm really lucky. But it's like, but also I think what you said, the last thing you said about your male relationships and having a vulnerable conversation with them is like, I've been that guy. Like I've been that guy in our relationships, and often just like, oh man, I'm struggling with this, or I feel like crap, or whatever, or this girl or something, or like I feel like a failure or something like that. And me, like you mentioned, it's like a tuning fork or a lightning rod. Like I start getting open and vulnerable, and all of a sudden it just creates an invitation for them to walk in. And now it's like, as I stay open and as I keep having these conversations and not being afraid, I'm seeing our relationships begin to change because they're bringing me more of their stuff that they're struggling with, but they struggle with a hell of a lot less, right, when they talk about it with another man. Like it's really inspiring and it feels so good to connect with. I mean, it's different when I'm connecting with my girlfriend, or I'm connecting with, other or women in my life, or my mom. But there's something, John, about when I talked to Lee the other day, there was this just this wonderful, respectful, honest, compassionate bond that was just flowing between the two of us. And
Nice.
and it would and I never
Wow.
talked to the guy before in my life,
That's
but
incredible.
we didn't play the game, and I think this is what happens often, the game of who's right. Right,
Yeah.
everyone loses when you play the game of who's right, and whole concept comes from NVC, nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, who's brilliant. You really want to, like, that's where we should all start as men in some ways, just as people, right, with nonviolent communication. But nobody wins that game of who's right, and I know a lot of my other male relationships. And even in my family, like, we're always trying to be like the puffy chest, like who's right, or put other people down, or just kind of, so you feel more important because of the insecurities that you have, because your lack of the ability to be vulnerable and be compassionate and connect honestly and authentically.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
wild, man. we men are walking contradictions.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, like,
But thanks for
because of
asking that
our,
question, John. That was
yeah,
nice.
man.
It's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. we're 35 minutes into the show. Let's get in some of the comments that we wanted to address from Monday's show, man. Let's see. I've got the document open in front of me here. But I don't know, were there any in particular that you wanted to hit up first?
Let me just take a look, John. Sorry. I thought, oh fuck, where's that document?
While you're doing that,
Yeah, go
what I'll
ahead.
do, you dig through that, and
Mhm.
I'll go through the document that we had on Monday,
Okay.
and just touch on a couple points that we never actually got around to, but I want to make sure that people, if they don't get a chance to read Liz Plank's book, again, For the Love of Men, there's some great things that she highlighted in there. One, I don't know if we got to this one, but which she called, obviously we talked about the man session, but she also talked about the great suppression. And that's how depression actually manifests itself differently in men. And not only does it manifest itself differently in men, we don't know how to talk about it. We don't have the tools to talk about it. We don't have the language to talk about it. And she used this term that hit me like a ton of bricks, man. It can cause serious issues in relationships. It can cause a woman to be a married widow. And the reason that hit me like a ton of bricks was, I think in my first marriage, I was completely non-communicative. I went through depression that I was not able to process properly, and I was not able to have a healthy and productive relationship with my ex. And she was, I think, a married widow in that respect. And she says it's called emotional restrictivity. It's something that is learned. It is not innate to biology, which is really interesting for me. And then I just have four other things that she brings up, and I'll just hit on the bullet points. One, she talks about paternity leave, and how paternity leave and maternity leave, how they're different, and how so many men are like, well, you can be there for the birth and be back at work an hour later, and how ludicrous that is, because really there's a lot of help that goes into a relationship, and how the countries that had a more equitable paternity versus maternity leave policy, how those countries are actually doing a lot better in female equalities.
And also, and John, I'll say with that point, is the bond with the child. I mean, like,
Yes.
how important is that? Like,
Huge.
how incredibly important is those first hours, those first several days, the weeks of like you being a male figure in that child's eye, whether male or female.
Right.
I mean, like, and what is your, I don't know if they have studies on this. It's like, the absentee father, shortly after birth versus like the father that stayed home for 3 months or even like 5 weeks. Like, what is that child turning into? So
yeah, I think I tagged you in a post earlier this week where it had, the dangers of, or manliness or lack of there's the man crisis or something like that. One of them was without a father interacting with their child regularly, or a I won't even say a father, but a masculine personality interacting regularly with a child, there can be lack of connection, lack of empathy, lack of compassion, because I don't want to exclude the same-sex couples. And then we talked about incarceration, or rather Liz talks about incarceration in her book, and how so many people, first of all, are unfairly incarcerated, and then how that has a rippling effect through families, specifically in the African American and people of color families. It's just mind blowing to me, and I have to admit my ignorance as a white man in that respect. And then guns and suicide, how men, when they do take their lives, typically take it in a very dramatic form, and guns are like off the charts as far as that being the weapon of choice to take their lives with, and how the countries with lower weapons in the homes have dramatically lower suicide rates. And she even addresses the fact that, you know, the common argument is if somebody's going to take their life, they're going to take it anyway. It's not true. It's shown that a lot of the time the people who take their lives with a gun won't take their lives in another method. And it's really fascinating points that I wanted to make sure we brought up at some point. Missed it on Monday, but that's that.
And also the suicide rates, John, 70% of all suicides are men. 70%. I mean, that's like, and it's like, good. If you, I mean, it's not surprising. Like if you're brought up as breadwinner and, you know, and like, and protector, and you can't do those things, right? And you're already living in the confined masculinity, like that set of values. It's like, oof, like, I mean, you're going to feel pretty shitty, I think, you know?
Yeah.
So
no doubt.
I'm trying to grab a comment here, John, but if there's another thing that you want to talk about, another question, go for it.
Yeah. Let's see. I had one other one. I'm trying to think. The Great Suppression. What we've learned. Oh yeah. Okay. This one was also really fascinating to me. Sorry guys, we're all over the place today, but it's a lot of fun, and I think we're learning a lot.
Yeah,
hopefully teaching a lot. So she talks about she has these like little what she calls amuse-bouches, like little appetizers in between chapters, and she has one that is a transgender male. So how he, when he became a male, learned the good things of being a man, because for some reason, I guess it's the social norms, when he would walk into a meeting and would start addressing the group, people would listen, which he had not seen when he was a female. When he would have to really try to talk over people in order to get them to listen, whereas as a male, when he would walk into a room and start talking, people would instantly listen. So that's one good thing about being a male. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that, hey, I walk into a room and I expect that. I'm just saying that's what he as a transgender male saw. But the flip side of that coin was soon after he made the transition to being a male, I want to say he had lost his mother. He lost his mother. And the first thing people started coming to him about was funeral arrangements, and they started addressing administrative things, financial things with him, and nobody asked him how he was feeling. And he felt completely alone and wasn't able to go to his now male friends about how he was feeling. And finally, somebody who had known him as a female before came to him and asked him, how are you feeling? And that was the first time, and it was days later that somebody actually asked him an emotional question rather than administrative, financial, you know, the process type
linear
questions.
like or
exactly.
transactional, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up that you know, those are aspects we never would have known about really unless we talk to somebody who has experienced life as both a male and a female. And that's the transgender lessons that were in that book were really eye-opening to me as a straight male who kind of just has my one experience here in this life as a straight male, and I don't know what it's like to be anything else. So that just opened my eyes to another angle. So that was it.
Yeah, I remember that Mouj Bouge, how he talked about how he was like immediately pressed into this confined masculinity, like pressed into it, like he had to be a certain way instantly, you
Yep.
know, and it was very confusing for him. It's like, what the fuck's going on? Like, why do I need to act like this? Like, what, you know, it's like, what I don't understand, you know, and
Right.
wow. Well, we're at we didn't get any of our comments. It's already at quarter
Let's take a
after.
look at the comments
Yeah.
on the show here. What do we got?
Yeah. So
Actually,
I mean, I'm just being note of time right now.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
uh, yeah. So here, let me read this one. Okay, we'll
Yeah,
see
man, go for it.
what's up with this. Okay, here we go. So this is by Sean Sant, who wrote a comment on our last post. He goes, so my question is pretty simple. I was raised with 3 strong women, mother, aunt, grandmother, Irish Sicilian. Hey, I'm an Irish Sicilian too, a little bit. We got some German in there too, Sean.
Hey, and
Right?
Sean's right here in Colorado Springs too. I'm going to be
Oh,
linking
there you
up with him
go.
soon.
There you go. Got a
Yeah.
coffee. Yeah. So the only male figure was extremely disengaged. So no influence. What happens to that male? Is there a belief that toxic masculinity is still feasible even after an upbringing with that strong of female influence? And this question really influenced me, so I'm going to keep going. So I'll just go back. Is there a belief that toxic masculinity is still feasible even after an upbringing with that strong of female influence? What about this major change with female combatants, female Green Berets, now with so how does that work? Where is the maintenance of their where is the maintenance of their femininity? Feminine CrossFit athletes and today crush their male counterparts. Well, I think I want to say, one thing about, Sean, having kind of a female dominated upbringing in a lot of ways. And I think that's like, you have sisters, John. I don't have any sisters,
3 sisters.
and I think, but I also think like that masculinity, a toxic masculinity starts at like, in the playground, starts at that school grade age when you start hanging out with other boys and all of a sudden, they want you to be a certain way, or they expect you to be a certain way. And then they also like, I remember changing schools when I was in 5th grade, John. I went from public school to a Catholic school, left all my friends at a very vulnerable age when I was like 9 or 10 years old. It's the first time I had a fight, John. And I was literally fighting because the boys, this group of like 4 or 5 boys, I was a newcomer. They felt threatened. And we're 9 or 10 years old. They felt threatened. And they wanted me to like, kind of like get in line with like the lead, boy of this group.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you know what I mean? Like, and it was the first time I was fighting, and it was like, and it was really hard. It was really, new feelings were opening up for me. Like I eventually, it all worked out because of my athleticism, I kind of won them over in some ways. It took a little while, but I think it comes, and not just that female influence in the home, which is huge. I'm sure your sisters, John, if you want to talk about that, had a giant impact still to this day, I would imagine, having in your life. But it's also like masculinity, or toxic masculinity or confined masculinity just isn't discovered or brought or educated or in the home. It's, it's in several different places. Like, coaches, could be a huge proponent or a huge of promoting toxic masculinity. Teachers saying things like that. So uncles, so that's I thought that was really interesting.
We talked about we've talked about positive and negative influences in our lives as far as our fathers, other men in our lives, coaches. And coaches, I basically think of my high school cross country and track coach as my second dad, and he's had a huge influence in my life. But if he had been very toxic, like beating me down or telling me, hey, stop running like a girl or something like that, which he did not do that. then you could definitely see how a coach could help to propagate the ideas of toxic masculinity, and I'm sure that happens all the time. And going back to Sean's question about the femininity, the maintenance, I think, what did he say? The femininity maintenance of Green Berets and special operators who
Oh
were
yeah. What about the major
and
change
CrossFit.
with female? Oh, I'm sorry. What about the major change with female combatants, female Green Berets now?
Yeah.
So how does that work? Where is the maintenance of their femininity?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think I think the toxic masculinity phrase that we've used, through several of our shows in the past, specifically in the past 3, that again comes to suppression of people being their authentic selves. And if those women want to be Green Berets and those women want to be superstar CrossFit athletes, that's their prerogative, and suppression of that's the toxic side. If they want to be that way, let them be that way. If a man wants to be more effeminate, hey, that's their authentic selves. I think if we suppress the authenticity, that's where I think really the term that what we probably should use is authenticity suppression, and that's where things really start to get dangerous. If you're suppressing somebody from being who they truly are inside, that's when things get toxic. Whether they want to err towards the more masculine side or err towards the more feminine side, regardless of gender, that's where things get a little complicated and start to get toxic. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up, man.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing that, again, I'm inspired by my conversation with Lee, and I just remembered, it was like, I think what really helped our conversation was, and I think for anybody entering this conversation, going back and listening to other episodes about this and really feeling triggered, what I'm feeling we're continually doing, John, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of it, is like we're trying to find a common ground, find one of the teachers in Buddhism is like the middle way. And so it's not like too much. It's not all about toxic masculinity. It's not hyper femininity. It's like, what's in the middle, and in order to get to the middle, requires that imagination, requires vulnerability, requires patience, requires compassion. And then from that place of this common ground of I think everyone that's listening, what we're doing here, John, is like, because we just want to have healthier and happier lives and more peaceful lives. And if we get too stuck on terms or ideas, and we're really trying to break down and dissect them so they don't feel so threatening or so triggering in a lot of ways, like what's possible, living in an imagination of knowing what is not working. Like to have a suicide rate of men in the United States be 70%. I mean, I'm not saying it's all men, but of all the suicides, it's like there's something that's not working. Yeah. And we're just trying to bring that awareness. Men talking about the mindfulness is just simply awareness. Because if we're healthier men, right, and we're trying to help and teach and educate healthier men and everybody, it's like, how is that coming back to the rippling effect of what's possible, and I live continually in that imagination of living on a great planet, and really everybody, we thrive by bonding together. And part of that I wrote from the workshop today, the mortar of relationship is compassion.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned helping everyone, right? And that's where I think both Ed and Liz mentioned, when we help one group, we're not taking away from another group. It's not a zero-sum game. By allowing people to be their authentic selves doesn't take away from other people. It really lifts everyone up. And if everyone is more authentic, if everyone is allowed to be more closely to what they truly are, then that helps everyone. It helps society writ large. So why would we not want to do that? It's not going to take away from anyone. So that said, let's wrap it up with a quick grounding session.
You got it, brother. You're up, John.
Let's do it. We'll do hey, we've talked about compassion a lot. We've talked about compassion the past 3 episodes, compassion tied to masculinity and how you can be compassionate, how you can be self-compassionate. Let's wrap it up with something that's going to help out everyone who's watching, and then everyone who's connected with everyone who's watching. So that said, go ahead and get into a comfortable position, whatever that looks like for you. And then if you feel comfortable doing so, close your eyes. And if not, just soften your focus. And then let's bring your attention rather than to your breathing, bring your attention to how you're feeling. Bring your attention to what emotions are running through your body, your mind right now, how those emotions are manifesting themselves. Perhaps they're manifesting as anger, as shame, as joy. None of these are necessarily wrong, but ask yourself why you're feeling those emotions. And have compassion for yourself for feeling those emotions. And now imagine someone sitting next to you and trying to get a feel for what it is they are feeling, emotionally and physically. And imagine yourself taking that person by the hand and literally lifting them up and figuratively lifting them up, giving them a hand, lifting them up. Now imagine two of you standing together, talking about what it is they're experiencing and what it is you can do to help. And now I want you to imagine that person is you. That other person is a reflection of you. The emotions that they are feeling are the emotions you're feeling. What they need is what you need. What can you do to help yourself out? What can you do to help those around you? We'll conclude with one deep cleansing breath. Bring your attention to your breath. Begin by breathing out all your air, bringing your navel to your spine. Breathe deep through your nose down into your belly. Hold that and let it go nice and slow, breathing out through your mouth. When you're ready, go ahead and come out of the practice. Bring some movement back into your body. Open your eyes if they were closed, or refocus your gaze. And that's that. Thanks so much, Will.
John. Oh my God, pleasure to be here, John. Even in your car, it's all good. And I'm just fucking around. It's okay. But thanks, John. Thanks. And hey, we'll be posting this. Thanks for everybody.
Absolutely.
lighting up the feed, commenting, being part of this. And again, subscribe, please, comment, give us a review, share this with your friends. And because we get to grow and create this conversation together, and a new world and a new definition of masculinity, which will help everybody. So thank you. And you, John, as well.
You too, brother. Take care.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining Will and John on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.